Back again with another review, and this is another request for Wildmanbeyond. He wanted me to talk about and review the 1985 film, The Last Dragon, and this is a film that I had heard about, and I only watched it for the first time recently. And thank you, Wildmanbeyond, for the request. And so before we get into the film itself, let's talk about the plot here. Plot here, so it's in New York City. You have a young man, Leroy, who is played by Mac, and he searches for the master to obtain the final level of martial arts mastery, known as the Glow. And along the way, he must fight a martial arts expert who is corrupted by power, and he has to rescue a beautiful singer from an obsessed music promoter. And that is the plot to the film here. Again, and get into the film itself. The opening of the film kind of sets the tone, with the martial arts aspect of it. And, Mac, which I think this was like his debut performance here. And you could tell, he's kind of rough around the edges, acting wise. The tone of the movie in the beginning I really liked. And then it quickly goes into sort of this music video driven tone, throughout the movie where it's very flashy, kind of a playful 80s, tone here. The soundtrack, it stands out, especially with the use of, DeBarge in the film. I really like that song in the film. And, the character of Leroy, he's likable. And like I said, even though his acting is a bit rough, but I thought he did an okay job here. And, throughout the film, there's a lot of, fun nods to, Bruce Lee. There's a scene in the film here where you have a theater of people, watching Enter the Dragon. And that's where you have the introduction of our villain, Sho'nuff, played by Julius Carey. And the character of the villain is a standout in the film. Just the way he played the character, very over the top, but in an entertaining way. And he's very charismatic. And the villain, for me, he's the highlight of the film. He steals every scene, and he's just a lot of fun to watch. Vanity's in the film, and she brings, presence and charm to the movie. And there's some appearances in the film that I was not expecting, like William H. Macy. He appears in a scene in the film as like a manager or, somebody working with Vanity. I'm like, is that William H. Macy? And then later on, Ernie Reyes Jr., his character would come into the third act of the film. And the thing is about the film, while I did enjoy it, I do think there was a little bit of tone clash here because it wants to be this martial arts journey. And I enjoyed, that aspect of it and, the villain Sho'nuff and stuff like that. But, the music industry subplot, I think, got a little bit too much for me. And that's where I think it kind of struggles a little bit. And why, I did like the film, but I wouldn't say like I love the movie. I know it's a film that has kind of gained a cult following. And, like I really enjoyed the martial arts narrative and the, like that stuff I really enjoyed. But, the subplot with Vanity and this music promoter who was stalking her and you got this other chick, I forgot the character's name, the redhead in the film, and, like stuff going on with her and, Mike Starr, Mike Starr is in the film, another recognizable actor. He kind of plays like an audio guy in the film, but it's just a lot of that stuff I didn't really care for. I think it really kind of, for me, it kind of took up what I think the film should have been about is the martial arts journey. Like if you want to have Vanity in there, that's fine. Like, okay, her character's in the music and, like I would keep the soundtrack and stuff like that, but I don't know, just a lot of the music video kind of subplots kind of, again, took me out of it a little bit. The fight at the end with the villain, I thought was, fun for what it was. And, the glow, the character of having the glow, I thought the effects were fun. Like, I really enjoyed the effects, and I thought they were creative for the time. And yeah, so yeah, I mean, I think I, talked about a few things here that, that I really liked about the film. And I think, there's a couple of things that I thought it could have been worked on a little bit. But with that being said about The Last Dragon, let me get to my overall thoughts on the movie. At the end of the day, for me, while this film does have a cult following, there's some enjoyment to be had here, with the film's soundtrack and, Vanity's presence, an entertaining villain. But the music-driven subplots can be distracting. And I would just say it's worth a watch. I think it's worth a watch. And for me, if I were to rate this film on a scale of 1 to 10, for me, I'm going to give this a 6. So I think it's a decent film. And again, Timac, he's okay in the film, even though he's a little, you could tell, a little rough around the edges, acting-wise, but there's some other good stuff here. But that's it for my review of The Last Dragon. Thank you, Wildmanbeyond, for the request. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.